Welcome to the CNBC TV18 budget verdict. I'm Shireen Bhan. Well, the budget has been delivered. The fine print is still being digested across different quarters. And as is our effort every year here on CNBC TV18. And I would like to add that this is our 10th year of doing the CNBC TV18 budget verdict, where we give an opportunity for industry to interact with the budget makers themselves and get their queries and their comments and clarifications from the budget makers themselves. So thank you very much to TV Somanathan as well as Mr. Sanjay Malhotra, the Revenue Secretary, for joining us here on the CNBC TV18 budget verdict. And thank you to our guests here from industry who join us. This is going to be an interactive brainstorming session. So we look forward to hearing from industry, and we'll come back to them for their questions and comments. But to both of you first, Mr. Somanathan, and I'm going to start by talking to you about the comments that have come in online, offline, on the channel as well. And the big one has to do with the removal of indexation benefits. Mr. Somanathan, were you anticipating this kind of a blowback that you have received?
Yes.
You were?
I know that every time you do something on anything, and if it could possibly lead to a tax increase, and if it involves the class that watches CNBC TV, then it is going to have blowback. So we are very well prepared for this. We are not surprised at all. And every budget that has anything that might remotely increase taxes will have blowback. So it's not a surprise. No.
Okay, it's not a surprise, but let me ask you what the expectation now is, and the expectation is building up over the last 24 hours. The suggestion is that, look, the government needs to perhaps review the decision as far as removal of indexation is concerned. In fact, let me put to you what Mohandas Pai has tweeted, and he's tweeted...
he's one of the very poor people in this country, very affected by taxes. Exactly.
He's tweeted to all of you saying, make all assets which had indexation grandfathered for value till April 24. This will keep honest taxpayers happy and reduce anger. Is that a suggestion that you're willing to take on board?
We take suggestions from everyone when we make our budget. We take suggestions from everyone when we respond to the budget in the reply to the budget, and we'll take all suggestions seriously, including that one.
No, but on a serious note, is there a possibility of a review? Do you take on board
It is not my job to discuss what the minister will say in her response, but I personally am not in favor of a review.
Not in favor of you. Mr. Malhotra, let me get you to, you both did explain the math behind the decision as far as the hike in rate, but the removal of indexation was concerned. But you believe that it hasn't been understood. Now, many are saying that with the removal of indexation benefit, people stand to lose, and perhaps there is a need to review the numbers itself.
Absolutely not. I feel, that the people will, the vast majority will actually, lose if we were to go back to the old system. It's not in their interest to go back to, indexation with a higher rate of taxation, which is 20%. So we have done our calculations, and I think the real estate industry also has, responded to it. And I saw, in the markets that the real estate industry, now that they have understood what it actually means, has come back, by about 7%. So any review, I think, will not be good for the industry. And may I also mention over here that in case the property that is actually sold, the proceeds thereof, rather, only the capital gains thereof, are used further to make investments in the same house, to buy another house in the same city or in another city, then there is no taxation involved.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very fair tax that has been imposed. This is a tax which is already there. It's, if at all, for vast majority, I would say, that this is a decrease and not really an increase. And for some, if it is really an increase, then they were really not paying any taxes. They should really actually, be paying taxes. 12.5%, I think, is a very, very low tax rate when you compare it with taxes on income, which go up to, 39%, taxes on interest, which again, go up to 39%, taxes on house rent, all other incomes, they have a higher tax rate. So if at all for some who were not paying these taxes, if it is going up to 12.5%, I think it is fair for everyone to pay those kind of taxes.
Mr. Somanathan, just to pick up on the point that was made there by the Secretary on what happens as far as the real estate sector is concerned, and we've heard two views over the last 24 hours. One view, of course, is that this will in fact spur new housing and the pickup as far as new housing is concerned. And, you know, we've already seen an acceleration in the real estate sector, especially post-COVID. The other view is that perhaps the investment value of real estate will now come under question and it could dampen mood and dampen sentiment. How do you read it?
See, I think our view is that investments need to be determined by inherent economic considerations, not by tax arbitrage. So if real estate returns are good, then people should continue to invest in real estate. And if the real estate returns are good, then a 12.5% rate is very, very attractive. If investments in real estate are not good, then they should not be invested in. But we would like investment decisions to be made not primarily on tax considerations, and it is a systematic effort that we are making to neutralize as many distortions that arise from tax considerations as possible. And this has been done with things like market-linked debentures, with insurance that is in the name of insurance but is actually a equity investment. So this is a consistent policy. So we are very happy for investment to happen in real estate, but I don't think a 12.5% tax rate either dissuades or encourages investment in real estate. And I think it's a very moderate rate of tax. And as Mr. Malhotra said, for the vast majority of the middle class, we are talking about, houses that you can roll over into another property. I mean, if we are talking about property worth above 10 crores, then that's a different matter. Then there I think 12.5 is a very concessional rate, and one should be very happy if you're selling a more than 10 crore house. But otherwise, you can roll it over into another property. You can roll it over through use of capital gains bonds. So for the vast majority of people, including the overwhelming majority of the middle class, I don't think this is a significant issue. And I think for most of them, they will end up preferring the 12.5% without indexation, because it will actually be lower if, in fact, real estate returns are good. If real estate returns are not good, then it might break even, and there may be a few cases where there's a slightly negative impact.
And you said, in your view, there should be no review and no rollback.
Certainly.
Okay. I will get the industry to comment with their questions and their comments, but there is a question that's coming from a foreign banker, Mr. Somanathan, and it's a clarification more than a question. Do the new LTCG rates and the STCG rates apply to foreign investors in Indian government bonds?
Indian government bonds, if they are... so first of all, there is no difference, in the taxation rates for residents and non-residents. If the bonds are actually listed, then there is, which they are, so there is a rate of 12.5% now, and so they will attract a higher tax rate.
So no
both
distinction.
For residents and non-residents.
Non-residents as well. Follow-up question on some of the other changes that have come in, and this has to do with what you've done on buyback. And again, the concern or the criticism is that, are you trying to kill buyback as an instrument? Mr. Somanathan,
we are trying to kill buyback as an instrument of tax avoidance. We are not trying to kill buyback.
But with the tax moving to the hands of the recipient, in effect, does it not make the buyback no longer an option?
Buyback may still be relevant as a capital structuring decision for a company, but it is maybe no longer relevant as a means of avoiding taxation for the promoters.
Yesterday when we spoke, Mr. Somanathan, you said that you're already getting significant revenue on account of LTCG. So if I were to ask you, between LTCG as well as STCG, what is the kind of revenue mobilization? Both you, Mr. Malhotra, and Mr. Somanathan, what is the expectation? What is the headroom for growth, both on account of the LTCG change as well as the STCG change, which is significantly higher?
No, so first of all, your question on buyback tax, as already mentioned, it is also, let's remember that it is equitas. It was like, Peter paying for Paul. So those who were in nil tax bracket or in lower tax rates, they were paying 20% tax rate, less than 20% if they are in 10%, 15% also. Now we have a rate of 15%, some of them nil. Why should they be paying taxes for those who should actually be paying taxes at 39%? So this is one of the primary considerations why we have, as we did with dividend some time ago, we did not do this. It should have perhaps been done earlier when we removed the the dividend taxation from the hands of the company to that of the shareholders. But still, it should be seen in that light. Insofar as revenues are concerned, from long-term and short-term, both, capital gains, we have figures for 22-23. We got about 1,06,000 crore. And the figures for last year should also be in similar region, although, the returns are yet, you are aware that the returns are yet to be filed. With this slight increase, especially, on the short term, there is hopefully, we will end up getting more revenues, both, from STT, buyback, and from the changes in the capital gains.
So what could that 1 lakh crore rupee number look like?
So we are expecting from the capital gains about 17,000 crore.
Okay. 17,000 from capital gains. Mr. Somanathan, and this is a question that's come in from Ratin Roy, and he was of course looking at the budget numbers yesterday on our program. And Ratin's point is that there has actually been a compression as far as expenditure is concerned. Expenditure to GDP, there has been a compression. He wants to know specifically the expenditure GDP ratio has dropped in FY25 compared to FY24, and whether it is now lower than 15 years ago.
The answer to whether it's lower than 15 years ago is he would probably know that better than me. I haven't checked. But yes, there is expenditure compression. The rate of growth in expenditure has been less than the rate of growth in GDP. So this year, expenditure has grown at about 8.5% and GDP has grown by 10.5%. So yes, as a percentage of GDP, expenditure has been compressed. That is correct.
Mm-hmm. So the expenditure compression, given the fact that, we are in a situation where the government has got to do the pump priming as far as the economy is concerned, so the fiscal consolidation has actually been achieved on account of expenditure compression, not necessarily revenue mobilization.
So expenditure compression in aggregate doesn't necessarily indicate which items have declined and which have increased. So this year there is a 0% growth in food subsidy. There is a decline in fertilizer subsidy. These are two very large items. Food subsidy has been flat because there are no change. I mean, it's difficult to reduce the price of food below zero. So there's not much more that can happen in terms of increasing food subsidy until costs go up further. So the food subsidy is constant. Fertilizer prices globally have moderated and are expected to be on average lower this year than last year. So two big expenditure heads are not growing. One is slightly contracting and the other is flat. This is the major contribution to the expenditure compression. Other items of expenditure are growing. So, and I don't think it is a bad thing for us to compress these two subsidies without affecting, in one case, we have not changed entitlements in the food subsidy. And in the other case, we have not changed entitlements to farmers or prices to farmers. So it is a happy occurrence that fertilizer prices globally have moderated a little. But otherwise, expenditure programs, government schemes, and capital expenditure are rising. Capital expenditure is going to be 17% higher than it was in last year's actuals. And all the government schemes, welfare schemes, education, health have seen increases. Agriculture sees an increase, rural development sees an increase. There's a new program for rural roads, which is the Gram Sadak Yojana, which is being extended to another 25,000 rural habitations. So I think what we are seeing is an improvement in the quality of expenditure. And yes, there is an expenditure compression.
There is an expenditure compression.
Let me add
go
to
ahead.
what Sir said is that, as Sir said, pointed out in the end, that there is an improvement in the quality of expenditure because the efficiency really, with implementation of direct benefit transfer and things like that, some of the wastages that were there, those have reduced. So without actually reducing the entitlements, this has actually helped in reducing our expenditure.
I'd like to add one more
Please.
to that. Thank you for that cue. In spite of a large increase in government borrowing over the last few years, we've also managed to rein in our interest expenditure. So this year, interest expenditure is growing at 9.5%, GDP at 10.5%, despite huge increases in borrowing in absolute terms in the last few years, especially during COVID. Now, this has also been partly possible because of a lot of changes in the way that we manage government expenditure, the way that we release money only when it is due and do not allow it to be stored in storage tanks at various places before it reaches the final beneficiary. So that has also helped us rein in our cash balances, reduce the amount of short-term interest payments that we make, and basically reschedule our borrowing to minimize our interest costs.